This image, an old fixed grip double on a visibly cold and windy day, epitomizes the classic East Coast skiing experience. For the longest time, skiing the East was significantly more raw than the experience offered by the upscale resorts of the American West. Nowhere else is this reflected more than in the lift systems of the East Coast. However, in recent years, the East Coast lift infrastructure has had a renaissance of sorts. Today, we'll go through some of the more notable projects we've seen and break down the impact they've had both on their mountains and the East Coast skiing culture overall. As a quick disclaimer, all observations and conclusions in this video are made from a consumer standpoint. Any discussion of intent behind specific lift decisions represents our interpretation rather than an official statement from the resort. Additionally, as alluded to in the intro, we're only going through the projects that we personally have gotten to experience. We'll start with the most mundane project and work our way up to the most insane. With that in mind, let's begin at Stowe with the Sunrise Lift. By destination resort standards, this is about as basic a lift upgrade as it gets, a standard fixed grip to a standard detachable. No bells and whistles, just a speed and capacity upgrade. Now, prior to Sunrise's 2022 installation, Stowe's Mount Mansfield face was served by the Forerunner Quad, a detachable lift with one notable shortcoming: it doesn't serve any true beginner terrain. As such, for owner-operator Vail Resorts, the decision to replace the old Mountain Triple with a Sixer wasn't just to help Forerunner chew through crowds. It reflects how top East Coast resorts are rethinking access for beginners and easing congestion, something we've seen more commonly in the West. The logic is simple. If beginners have a good first day, they're more likely to come back. That philosophy has driven lift design and terrain development at Western resorts for decades, but it hasn't historically been as prominent in the East. That's largely because the East has long relied on smaller, mellower ski areas to handle beginner progression, with destination resorts like Stowe acting as a later step rather than an entry point. While it would be a stretch to imply a region-wide shift in visitation patterns, Sunrise 6 nonetheless signals something important: a rethinking of where and how East Coast skiers are expected to learn. In that sense, this seemingly unremarkable project represents a quiet but meaningful change in the region's approach to beginner skiing. Falling right in line with Stowe's Sunrise is Whiteface's The Notch, a 2023 detachable quad that serves a similar purpose. There are, however, two key differences that make the Notch even more notable. The first is the connection it created. Prior to this lift, the Bear Den side of the mountain skied fairly independently from the main face, with catwalking required to move between. This worked well for true first-timers who were effectively segregated from the more aggressive skiers elsewhere on the mountain. But it became a limitation as those beginners progressed, not yet ready to commit to the main lifts and blue terrain, but already outgrowing the Bear Den runs. The Notch solved that problem, providing a clear intermediate step between the Bunny Hill and the Blues. Once again, this is a lift designed around a specific demographic, with the goal of improving the experience enough to encourage not just return visits to the resort, but to the sport itself, though that latter piece is a discussion for another video. And then, of course, there's the mid-station. Detachable mid-stations are notoriously expensive, which is why they're exceptionally rare. In this case, though, Whiteface recognized that the Notch needs to serve two distinct purposes. The first, as mentioned, was to access green terrain more advanced than what's available at Bear Den. That role is fulfilled by the mid-station, with Boreen and its surrounding runs acting as critical progression terrain. The second purpose was to serve Legacy Lodge, offering an alternative to the often crowded base area lodges. A single terminal location would have forced beginner skiers to funnel onto a narrow road, hardly an ideal experience. Instead, Whiteface opted to build both on-load locations, absorbing the significant added cost so that the lift could serve both functions. Now we start to get into the truly fancy stuff, beginning with Killington Snowden 6. Built in 2018, this lift isn't especially notable for a dramatic increase in speed or capacity, but rather for what's attached to the chairs themselves: bubbles. Closely related are a pair of lifts at Okemo. Sunburst 6, installed in 2014, features both bubbles and heated seats. Meanwhile, the Evergreen Summit Express is a quad chair lift with bubbles and a somewhat unusual history. Originally installed in 2002 as a standard chair, it received bubbles in 2015 before being relocated to its current alignment in 2021. For the sake of this discussion, it makes the most sense to treat Evergreen Summit as a 2015 bubble installation. In principle, bubble chairs are a common-sense solution for cold, stormy days. They've been widespread in Europe since the 1990s, but only recently have they begun to gain real traction on the east coast of North America. Historically, there were two major hurdles: wind and culture. On the technical side, bubbles effectively act like sails, meaning wind tolerance was a serious limitation in earlier generations of lift design. The successful installation of these lifts in the 2010s reflects just how far lift technology had advanced since the early 2000s, when a retrofit like Evergreen Summits would have been far less viable. The cultural hurdle is more subtle. While it would be an oversimplification to say that East Coast skiing was defined solely by suffering through bad weather and embracing rugged conditions, there was far less emphasis on comfort or glamour than in Europe, and even compared to parts of the western US. At the risk of sounding repetitive, these bubble lifts represent a shift in priorities, a growing emphasis on the overall resort experience, not just the skiing itself. Just one state over in New Hampshire, Waterville Valley built a new bubble six-pack in 2022 that, functionally, is very similar to lifts like Snowden 6 and Sunburst 6, with one major exception: the manufacturer. If you asked most skiers to name companies that build detachable chairlifts in North America, many would mention Doppelmayr or Leitner Poma. A few particularly dedicated lift enthusiasts might also recall names like Jan or Leitner's earlier incarnations, but far fewer would recognize the company behind Waterville's Tecumseh Express. That lift was built by MND Ropeways. What often goes unnoticed is that the North American detachable lift market effectively operates as a duopoly. Resorts typically solicit bids from just two manufacturers, Doppelmayr and Leitner Poma of America, and while that's preferable to a monopoly, it still limits pricing leverage and, more critically, manufacturing capacity. In recent years, resorts have increasingly had to place lift orders several years in advance simply to secure a production slot, something that would have been far less common a few decades ago. The arrival of a third manufacturer has the potential to change that. With Tecumseh, MND is signaling an attempt to enter a market at one of the best possible times. North America has a massive inventory of aging lifts dating back to the 1970s through 90s, many of which are now due for replacement. At the same time, modern resorts overwhelmingly favor detachable chairlifts, further straining the limited capacity of the existing manufacturers. It's worth noting that, since Waterville's installation, MND has not yet built another detachable chairlift in North America. Still, one project is more than none, and Tecumseh represents a meaningful first step. This development isn't uniquely important to the East Coast, but given that MND's equipment ships from France, any expansion of their North American footprint would likely begin there. One additional detail worth noting is the condition of Tecumseh's bubbles. Despite being a newer lift, the bubbles showed noticeably more wear and scratching than those on the previously mentioned bubble lifts. That suggests MND may still be catching up to its more established competitors in certain areas of refinement. While that could act as a short-term limitation, it also creates an opportunity. As a newer company not yet locked into full capacity production, MND may have more room to experience and introduce genuinely innovative solutions. The oldest lift on this list by a wide margin is Sunday River's Chondola, installed in 2008. While it wasn't the first Chondola on the East Coast, it remains the only one in New England and one of only a handful in North America. A Chondola is exactly what it sounds like, a single lift line alternating between open chairs and enclosed gondola cabins. In theory, it's an elegant compromise. Chairlifts offer convenience but expose riders to the elements, while gondolas provide shelter at the cost of loading simplicity. A Chondola attempts to split the difference, allowing skiers and riders to use the chairs as normal while offering enclosed cabins that can accommodate non-skiers or those seeking a more protected ride. Whether or not Sunday River regularly allows pedestrian access in winter, the format itself is clearly designed with that flexibility in mind. What complicates the rationale is the context in which this Chondola operates. It runs parallel to two other detachable chairlifts, which raises the question of why it wasn't built as a full gondola instead. And, despite its size and enclosed cabins, the Chondola is notoriously wind-prone, often among the first lifts to be placed on hold during high winds. Enclosed cabins are only advantageous when they actually get you somewhere, so there is perhaps some merit to the question of having built it as a full chairlift instead. Nonetheless, as a result of all this, the Chondola stands apart from the other lifts discussed here. While each of the newer projects has a relatively clear, targeted purpose, the Chondola's reasoning is less straightforward. It's an ambitious and unusual solution, but one whose benefits are more situational, making its original motivation the most ambiguous of the group. If you're a lift nerd like me, you probably know where this is going. For everyone else, fair warning, we're not done with Sunday River yet. In fact, we're just getting started. First up is Barker 6, a 2023 install. The old Barker Mountain detachable quad was, quite simply, a problem. It was mechanically unreliable, highly wind-prone, and routinely overwhelmed by demand. Guests had been calling for a replacement for years, and when owner-operator Boyne Resorts finally acted, they went all in. Barker 6 was built to eliminate every one of those issues and things you never would have even thought of. Barker is significantly more wind-resistant than its predecessor, and it's loaded with modern features designed to improve both throughput and comfort. There's a loading carpet to streamline boarding, the world's second ever set of red bubbles, along with heated seats for cold days, and auto-closing, locking, and opening restraint bars that make it one of the safest lifts in operation. The chairs themselves are made up of individual contoured seats designed by Porsche, which feels more like high-end gaming chairs than traditional lift benches. Under the hood, it's a Doppelmayr D-line with direct drive, which just means it's the absolute top of the line, and it shows. The ride is exceptionally fast and smooth. So, does replacing a long-troubled lift with the most advanced chair money can buy make up for years of issues? Boyne clearly thinks so. And given the final two projects we still need to talk about, both also Boyne installations, that might just be their defining approach. Over on the Jordan side of Sunday River, Barker's sister ship takes the form of the Jordan 8. Installed 1 year earlier, Jordan looks nearly identical and shares many of the same features, just 2 seats wider. The most noticeable omission is the auto-lowering restraint bar, but in every other respect, Jordan is just as fast, smooth, and reliable as Barker. And remember how Barker features the second ever set of red bubbles? Jordan has the first, and to this day, these remain the only 2 lifts in the world equipped with them. Just across the border in New Hampshire sits another close relative, Loon Mountain's Kankamagis 8, or Kank 8 for short. Kank 8 is nearly identical to Jordan, though fitted with a more conventional gray bubble. Together, Jordan 8 and Kankamagis 8 account for 2 of the 3 8-seater chairlifts on the East Coast, and 2 of just 7 in all of North America. While both are undeniably statement pieces from Boyne Resorts, the reasons behind their construction differ slightly. At Loon, crowding has long been a challenge. The Kankamagis pod serves a collection of popular blue cruisers that draw a large share of the mountain's intermediate traffic. While there were arguably other areas that could have used attention, as an out-of-base lift serving some of Loon's most in-demand terrain, Kankamagis made sense as Boyne's first foray into ultra-high-end lifts on the East Coast. Notably, it was built a year before Jordan and 2 years before Barker. At Sunday River, the motivation was less reactionary and more anticipatory. Crowding in the Jordan Bowl has never been the core issue. Instead, the lift was built in preparation for a massive expansion, a topic worthy of its own video someday. What matters here is that the Jordan Bowl is positioned as the future gateway to that expansion and likely the site of a fully developed base village. In that context, Jordan 8 isn't solving a present problem so much as preparing for a future one. And for now, at least, lapping the Jordan Bowl remains absolutely magical. Taken together, Barker, Jordan, and Kankamagis go far beyond the earlier idea of simply improving the skier experience. These lifts aren't just designed to encourage return visits, they're designed to attract visitors in the first place. While Jordan was clearly built with the future in mind, Barker and Kankamagis are purer expressions of the concept. These aren't just machines, they're showpieces. For the longest time, ski lifts have been just a means to an end, a mechanism to get you up the mountain. But with projects like these, the lifts are no longer just in the background, they're starting to steal the spotlight. And by letting them shine, a quiet revolution is unfolding in East Coast skiing. Is it drastic? Not yet. But the change is real, and it's happening slowly, lift by lift. So next time you ride one of these fancy bubble chairs, take a moment to think about what was there before, appreciate the ride, and make it a run to remember. As always, we thank you all for watching. All my love, I'm out.